you doing?
Sojung, I'm holding a placemat made of 100% bamboo. Do you know why I brought it here today?
You want to talk about the bamboo ceiling.
That's right. We have as our guest today the global leadership expert and the author of the best-selling book, Breaking the Bamboo Ceiling.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are delighted to welcome Jane Hyun. Welcome, Jane.
Welcome, Jane.
Thank you for having me on the show.
You're in town now.
I am. I'm often on the road, but this week I'm in New York, and I'm really glad that I could make it to the show.
Oh, well, we're thrilled to have you. We usually start the show by sharing the bio of our guests, and I'd like to do that now and share some highlights from your life with our audience.
Sure.
You were born in Korea, but you moved to Queens when you were around 7. You attended Bronx High School of Science and then studied economics and international studies at Cornell University. You were vice president of human resources and talent development at JP Morgan and director of recruiting at Deloitte & Touche and Resources Global. You published Breaking the Bamboo Ceiling in 2005, which made it on various bestsellers lists. And you founded Hyun & Associates in 2003 and have been working as an executive coach and leadership strategist to Fortune 500 companies, top MBA programs, and nonprofit organizations. Wow. We'd like to go into everything one by one.
Jane, I want to start from when your family immigrated to Queens. I immigrated to Queens as well with my family when I was 5.
So
which part of Queens?
We lived in Elmhurst.
Elmhurst. We were in Sunnyside, right nearby.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, you were 7 years old when you immigrated. Was there any culture shock coming to New York?
You know, I'm sure there was. I only spoke Korean when I was in Korea until I came and moved to the States. I think the culture shock was probably more of a, where am I? You know, kind of, we're not in Kansas anymore kind of a feeling. Versus kind of, it's a hostile place or it's a difficult place where people were, making fun of me or anything like that.
Did you continue to speak Korean after you lived here?
Yeah, I have to say my parents encouraged me to speak English more in the early days, just because they wanted me to learn the language. So probably from age 7 to about maybe 11 or 12, I mostly spoke English. They, of course, spoke to me in Korean, and I understood it, so I responded in English. But I remember them emphasizing that I should really learn the language. My grandparents came to live with me. Actually, my grandmother came to live with me when I was about 10, 11. And so I was forced to speak Korean. And I had to relearn some of the things that I had learned earlier.
Well, that's interesting because my grandmother also came to live with me in 10 or 11. I think right around that time, there was that influx of the grandparents coming in just because all our parents were working probably.
Let's talk about your high school experience.
Sure.
You attended the Bronx High School of Science.
Yeah, I had a pretty positive experience there. Before that I went to a Catholic school, which went up to 8th grade, and so it was a very small kind of environment. But Bronx Science had, something like 700 to 750 students in the graduating class. So if you were a big fish in a small pond, you suddenly became a small fish in a big pond. And so that was eye-opening for me. But it was also a time where I actually rediscovered some of my Asian culture. There were a lot of Asian kids who were in the school. It wasn't all Asian. I think it's actually probably more Asians now than it was in the early 80s. But I definitely established some friendships with Asians that I hadn't had before.
So as you mentioned in Cornell then, for the first year you were pre-med?
Yeah, I think when I first entered Cornell, I went in with the notion that I would go to med school. But I discovered pretty early on that first year that although I could do the work and I wasn't failing any classes, it wasn't something that I just loved to do every day. And I knew, I think deep in the recesses of my heart, that I wanted to do something that I can really put my full engagement into. Both something that I really love to do and that didn't seem like work to me, over and over again. So that kind of triggered the thinking around making a change.
So what did you change your major to?
Yeah, it was a lot of soul searching, but I settled on a couple of classes that I had taken in business and economics were interesting to me, and psychology as well. But economics and international studies became my major.
And after Cornell, you went off and got a job at JP Morgan, and that was your first job?
It was.
And do you recall going into that first interview? Do you remember were you nervous at all? How did you prepare for it?
Yeah, I don't know if it was necessarily nervousness, but I was completely unfamiliar with the whole system of corporate recruiting. There's a whole science to how they do it, and an art as well. There's a whole long process of coming to campus. They actually make the presentations on campus. And then once you make the first round on campus, you have to go back to the company, and they invite you back to a New York City location, and you go through a round of maybe 7 or 8 interviews with people so that you can be vetted and people understand what you do. So it was actually a very stressful process, but I don't think I necessarily disliked the interview process. I actually enjoy getting to know people and for them to get to know me.
And at that point, did you know you wanted to be in human resources?
I did not. I did not.
So how did you find your way into that department?
I started working at Morgan and was hired into one of their training programs. And so how the training programs work is that you spend a couple of months in different business units throughout the firm. And after about 2 years or so, and sometimes less, you decide what business group you want to work in permanently. After the first 2.5 years, an opportunity came up where they wanted someone to manage some undergraduate and MBA recruiting efforts. And it sounded really interesting. And I was always kind of intrigued inside the company about how they actually attracted people into the company and how did they actually promote them and develop them into a senior executive at some point. Now, once I got into that field, I really fell in love with it. It was a really great fit for me. It sort of combined my knowledge of investment banking and my understanding of the business with the ability to help people and coach students and work with them to find the match. So I can help organizations find the best fit on campus so that we can hire the right people.
And then at a certain point you were promoted to vice president, and then you went on to be director of recruiting at Deloitte.
Right.
So was that kind of a big jump up in the human resources world?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. In fact, I got promoted about 6 months before I left. Oh. So it was I was young, I was 28, and I had reached a point where I think I had some credibility in the organization.
Must have been a difficult decision, though, to leave after getting promoted and 6 months later.
I look back on it and I think, boy, that was a big risk I took.
Yeah.
But I always thought you should go when you know what you're doing and you're at the top of your game, right? And if you, especially if you have other aspirations, that there are things that this organization has offered to you, but the future looks like you can actually use that skill in a different way.
So after you were at Deloitte, then you made the jump to start your own company, Hyun & Associates, in 2003.
Yep.
And tell us a little bit about that. Were you afraid of making the big jump? Or were you pretty confident when you went in?
Yeah, I was afraid, I have to be honest. That is a big risk, right? It's going from security, benefits, a salary that keeps coming in, to uncertainty, and who are your clients, and are they going to keep coming back?
Did you have any partners to go into this endeavor?
No, I was all on my own.
Oh, wow.
All on my own. Yeah. It was scary, and actually I think when my friends learned that this is what I wanted to do, they kind of thought I was crazy. It's like, what's that? What's coaching and training? And so I think they really couldn't understand it as a career, as a concept that would fly.
What is an executive coach exactly?
Yeah, executive coaches are external, objective, third-party people who help you. Right? I wouldn't say they're mentors, because mentors are usually people who are inside the company or outside that give you advice. But executive coaches are people who are typically hired by the company or organization. Companies do hire them for their either high potential employees or employees they want to invest in, so that they can develop leadership skills for the next jobs. And what we do is we go into an organization and we work with the people that were assigned, and we identify what they want to achieve. And so each coaching engagement is a little different. And we also do training. So we do workshops and group training events. Now, culture certainly doesn't exist by itself. And to say that all Asians have these cultural preferences and all Westerners don't would be a mistake, right? We all have, I think, a variety of different things that impact how we behave, including personality, our leadership style, in addition to the cultural preferences that we have. I think my family overall, although they were concerned, again, they let me do it. Right. And actually, by this time I was married, so my husband let me do it too.
Actually, that brings
so it was both of us.
Yeah, I just read recently something from Sheryl Sandberg, the COO of Facebook.
Yes,
she made a comment that I thought was so interesting. It really impacted me. And she said, the best career choice you can make is who you'll marry.
That's right.
It's
choosing the right husband.
It's choosing the right husband.
Right.
And I thought, that is absolutely right. And in your case, you have a wonderful husband who has been so supportive of your career.
I couldn't agree with that more. And when you're a single, you don't think about that.
Right.
Right? You just
Exactly.
think about, is there chemistry? Do I like this person, personality, and all this other thing? And you don't think about when, fast forward 10 more years, when you have kids and when you have a career and you want to balance all of that, will he or she be supportive, right? I think that's a really critical question. David has always been not only supportive, but really just kind of doing whatever he can to help with the kids, when I'm traveling, or just really be supportive of everything that I do. So I'm very grateful for that.
Good for him.
Absolutely. And I encourage all the Korean men out there to do the same.
Yes.
We'll do our part to help the Korean American women get there.
So tell us about breaking the bamboo ceiling. What does bamboo ceiling mean?
Yeah. Well, the bamboo ceiling refers to kind of a combination of things, both individual, cultural, and organizational barriers that keep Asians from reaching the top of Fortune 500 companies. There's clearly a nod to the glass ceiling, which has traditionally been known as a term used to describe barriers that women face as they rise inside organizations. I chose bamboo ceiling because I think for many years, I think people thought Asians were doing okay, and that we were never talked about in the concept of diversity, and we were never at the table around that. And I think they thought maybe we were doing okay, we were the model minority, look how many go to Ivy League schools and succeed and have a successful life. But we all know that not everybody makes it to the top. There's a lot of more Asians coming in the door. But then when you look at a certain level of management, they're not there anymore. Either they leave because they can't succeed in the company, or they're given a message that they don't have a potential in there. So that was the motivation for me to write the book. I interviewed 100 executives, so not just Koreans or Asians, but white males, women, African American executives, really people who were in influential roles of these organizations across the spectrum. And I found that in order to be successful, in order to kind of move past middle management to the senior executive suites, you had to move through these 3 stages. The first stage was kind of the be good at what you do stage, right? Be reliable, do a lot of work, be accurate. The second stage was your credibility building phase. So building a lot of relationships, right? Knowing people, if you work in, let's say, finance and sales and marketing and HR and the global regions and supply chain, and knowing how to leverage those resources to get your job done. And then ultimately, the ones who made it through to the top levels were people who were able to have organizational impact, right? So they thought like an owner, right? They thought like a partner. They thought not just about their own department and what they needed to do to be successful in their department, but about the whole organization and their whole firm. The challenging thing that I saw was that women and multicultural professionals, including Asians, tend to spend a lot longer in that first stage, which is that work hard, right, stage. Because we know that that's what we were given as
we grew up
as
with
an
that value.
imperative. Yeah,
Sure.
열심히 공부해야 돼. Just
right.
stay home and
Put
study.
your head down. Don't pay attention to what's around you.
That's right. And I think that guides us, for a long time. But if no one's there to say, you've been here for 10 years now, and it's time for you to really start to, find some mentors, think about what you want to do next, and build your skills so that you can move on to other roles. And that's the only way you move up. You do different jobs, right? So you can be more flexible.
Well, one thing that I find so fascinating about your book is that it applies not only to people who want to succeed in the business industry, but it's also in a sense, a parenting guide. Because, as a mother of 3, I'm really tuned into that sort of thing.
Yes.
There was a CNN piece that talking about parenting, and it was titled "Breaking the Bamboo Ceiling."
Yes.
Now tell us about that piece.
Yeah, I was really intrigued about that piece, and I was really happy to be invited to that because what spurred it on was Wesley Yang's article in New York Magazine about paper tigers, which kind of challenged some of the things that were in Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother. What the show was trying to do was kind of talk about what happens to these kids after they graduate from college, right? And so let's say they go to Harvard, whatever Ivy League school they go to, because they followed the roadmap of that successful child. What happens to these kids? Do they find success? And if not, what happens to them? And so it was myself and a psychologist and a personal money expert who I think grew up with both Latino and Asian heritage, what she thought. And I was able to weigh in a little bit about the bamboo ceiling effect.
Can you share with us some specific principles relate to parenting from your book?
The best thing you could do for your child is, you know your child best, right? And so maybe the first thing you do is really help them, watch them, and see what emerges, right? And so really keep an eye on what they're drawn to, what they tend to pick up if you go to a class, the kind of things they ask you for. I mean, those are kind of things to observe as a parent on the outside. But as they get a little older, and my daughter's getting older now, you know, she's 11, and I see where her strengths are. You know, she's very athletic, she's very coordinated, unlike her mom. And she's, you know, very kind of, she actually is really good at math and science, as well as her other activities. So thinking, wow, that's something to note. My son is 7, and he's very different from my daughter. He's totally gregarious. You know, he's so friendly. Maybe he'll be a politician. You can mentor him.
I'll be happy to. More than happy to.
Yeah, he's the kind of guy, when he was 2 years old, on the bus, he would just say hello to everybody on the bus.
I saw this like 8-year-old kid that's black.
Wow. I try to keep the weekends for them though, the weekend, because they're so busy during the week. So whatever we can do on the weekends with family, that's what we always try to commit to. Okay, let's go.
We do a lot of work around communications and building your value proposition. And so a lot of times I find, for example, for Asians, you know, we're not good at selling ourselves all the time, right? Even if we're doing well, we're not talking about it.
We're so humble. We've
humble.
been grown to value. We've been raised to value
the nail that
humility.
sticks out gets hammered down. That kind of philosophy.
Yeah. But you know what we're trying to do is help people understand that not talking about yourself doesn't mean that you're humble, right?
That's true.
Right. So we want to try to figure out a way for them to feel comfortable talking about their accomplishments in a way that's more natural.
So, Jane, can you give us a demonstration and do some
That'll
role
be fun,
playing?
yes.
Yes, show us what is a not so ideal way to pitch yourself, and then contrast that with something that
you want
would be
me
a
to
good
show
way.
it?
Yes.
You want you to show it, and
okay.
we'll learn
All right.
by watching.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So here's kind of one way that you can do it. Let's pretend that you are a senior manager and I ran into you somewhere in the hallway and you asked me like, oh, Jane, good to see you, how's it going? You know, what's new with you these days? And so you kind of stop together. So here's one we could do. Well, I have been, my name is Jane Hyun, and I have been in this company now for about 6 months. And I graduated from from XYZ College 6 months ago, and I've been doing this job for a while. I really enjoy my job, and I really would like to work in a different department one day. Yeah, that's one way to do it, right?
Okay.
So what do you see in there? What are some things that, you know, could be done differently?
Well, you were a little uncomfortable.
Okay.
I saw some
not
discomfort
much eye
there.
contact.
Okay.
and,
Yeah.
A lot of pauses in between what to say next, and
And it was just facts. It was
Yeah,
just, I've been here
that's
6
right.
months. I went to this college.
not
and-
not so personal.
Yeah, not very personal
Not getting
at all.
to know the person.
Not memorable.
That well.
Well,
Yeah.
if somebody remembers you before the not so good things and nothing positive walking away from it as a senior manager.
That's
anyway.
right. There's not a lot except that I remembered your name, right? And
Right.
and not a lot that. There's nothing that that can kind of be the hook that you would remember me by in some way. So okay, let's try it this way. This is a little bit off the cuff, so I don't know if I prepared something good. But okay, so let's say I ran into you again.
Okay.
Hello, Jane.
Yeah. Hello, Mr. Kim. It's great to see you again. And say you asked me, so what's going on with you?
So what's going on with you?
Yeah. I'm so glad you asked. I've been working in this XYZ business group for the last 6 months, and it's been going great. As you know, I took on that one client that was really challenging for us. And I have to tell you, it's been a really interesting client to work with. In fact, in the last 2 weeks, we were able to actually get a referral to another client because of some of the great work we've been doing with this client. I'd love to tell you about that sometime. And so I know you're really busy, but if you're available sometime and you're in town, I'd love to get on your calendar and just I want to ask you some questions about sort of your vision for the group and tell you a little bit more about how I want to contribute next. So, bye.
Wow, what a
Nicely done. Yes.
So just a little bit. I mean, that's a very
Right.
short version.
Right.
That's more of a social kind of a banter
Sure.
thing. But we actually spend time actually on the whole. What would you say if you had longer time, right?
Right.
So if you had 5 minutes and they said, well, tell me about yourself. How would you talk about yourself? And yet kind of be interesting enough to the person and connect to that person in a way that's a little bit more genuine versus just factual, biographical, things that you could find on a resume. Yeah.
Well, you went to Korea to do a training session.
Yeah, I was actually quite happily surprised that people were really hungry for it. First of all, when we did the training, we had kind of the large group presentation where everybody was there, like 100 people. But I have to tell you, even in that big setting, when I asked for some volunteers to come up and practice some of the things, it was not hard for them to come up. So I was happily surprised, and I wonder if there's kind of a new generation of Koreans coming.
What was the most common source of friction that you saw?
Cultural friction?
Yeah, cultural friction.
I think that a lot of friction or conflict comes from communication challenges. We Americans, American business culture is very business oriented, right? It's about getting something done. It's about achieving something, about what the bottom line is. And so even though we're friendly and we develop a relationship, we get down to business fairly quickly, right? We can have lunch with someone, for about 10 minutes into the appetizer, you can say, okay, so let me talk about the business at hand, right? We could do that pretty quickly. But I think in many Asian countries, relationships are really important. And it's not that one lunch that's going to make you actually sell that product or service. It's going to take time.
The relationship aspect is so important because
so important.
last summer I went to China to do a deal, and it was kind of the same thing where at 3:30 I was in the person's office and wanting to get to the terms, and he just said, Kevin, are you free for dinner? And I said, well, I wasn't, but then I kind of got the hint, and I was like, oh, yes, of course. And then, changed my schedule around, and then at dinner after a few drinks, he kind of explained to me, in China, we just don't get things done in the office during daytime. It's really got to be at dinner or over drinks.
That's
and I
right.
think, Korea, China, Japan, you have a lot of that relationship building that needs to be there first for anything to happen.
That's right.
And for us not to understand it on the Western side, because we're here trying to get the deal done between 9 and 5, and so you could have family time and do other stuff, but it seems a little different out there.
So how do you balance family and work?
That's an ongoing challenge. I don't think it's a perfect balance ever, and it's something that I struggle with still. Because sometimes when you're on a trip, even if it's one night and you come back the next day, you might miss something that happens here. And with kids, things happen when you least expect it. You can't say, well, I'm home now, it's 7:30, and I want you to tell me everything that you did today, the highlights, the lowlights, who hurt your feelings in school, and what was your teacher like. It doesn't all come out when you want it, and you have to just let it happen. I enjoy work. I find my work challenging, and so kind of being kind of fully engaged in other challenges than just parenting and being with the family helps me be more engaged when I come back, because I have some new perspectives. I have a fresh eye and a lens that I can see everything through. And so even if I'm stressed in either camps once in a while, when things just, everything is happening and the deadlines are happening, I think at the end of the day, I'm a better parent because I work, and I think I'm a better worker because I'm a parent. And so I think it's that integration of those two perspectives that help me keep doing what I'm doing.
We will be giving away some autographed copies of Breaking the Bamboo Ceiling. Please visit our website for details. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you.